The Great Depression was a hard time. Money was tight, and families had to grow their own food to survive. Greens were no longer side dishes. They were the main meal. In this video, we're looking at 20 forgotten greens that helped our grandparents get through those tough years. Number 20. Sorrel. Sorrel was a kitchen favorite during the Depression, not just for its lemony flavor, but because it was one of the first greens to appear in spring. Its tart leaves were used in soups, sauces, or simply sautéed in butter when gardens had little else to offer. In an era when fresh fruit like lemons was hard to afford, sorrel stepped in as a tangy stand-in. It was easy to grow, almost like a weed, and it came back year after year without fail. Families with very little could still count on sorrel to brighten up a bland potato dish or balance a fatty cut of meat. Its resilience matched the spirit of the times, tough, self-reliant, and quietly generous. Every patch of sorrel carried a hint of hope and plenty of flavor. Number 19. Lemon Balm. Lemon Balm was more than just a calming tea. It was a green that lifted spirits when spirits were low. Its bright, citrusy leaves brought a mild tang to salads, sandwiches, and herb butter. But more importantly, it offered comfort. Families steeped it into tea to ease frayed nerves, calm fussy children, and help with sleep during restless nights. It grew fast, spread wide, and asked for almost nothing, just a bit of sun and space. Folks often dried the leaves for winter use, storing jars of lemon balm like medicine, and in many ways, that's precisely what it was. In the worst years of the Depression, when stress weighed heavy and food was bland, a handful of lemon balm reminded people that something gentle, fragrant, and healing could still grow. Number 18. Salad Burnet. Salad Burnet was a humble but steady green that quietly earned its place on Depression-era tables. Its crisp, cucumber-like taste made it a welcome addition to salads, sandwiches, and light soups, especially when fresh produce was scarce or non-existent. Families grew it close to the kitchen door, snipping what they needed without ceremony. Burnet thrived in rocky, worn-out soil and didn't demand much water, making it ideal for gardens that had to make do with little. The leaves were harvested young for their tenderness and flavor, and the plant remained green well into the colder months. Its refreshing bite helped balance the heavy starches and root vegetables that dominated many meals. In a time when anything fresh felt like a blessing, Salad Burnet gave struggling families something cool, crisp, and quietly comforting. Number 17. Winter Savory. Winter Savory was a cold, hardy herb that families used as both a seasoning and a green during rough years. It had a bold, peppery flavor, like thyme with attitude, that helped stretch out the flavor of dried beans, fatty pork, and root vegetables. It thrived in poor soil, asked for very little water, and even helped repel garden pests. Some people called it the poor man's pepper, and for good reason. It brought heat to otherwise plain meals. Families grew it near the kitchen so they could pick a handful year-round, especially when there was nothing else fresh. A few leaves in a stew, a sprig tossed into a roast, and suddenly a bare-bones meal felt complete. During the Depression, winter savory was a tough little ally when times were lean. Number 16. Bee Balm, Wild Bergamot. Bee Balm wasn't just a splash of color in tough times, it was a full-service green with flavor, function, and flair. Its minty, citrus-like leaves were brewed into tea, especially when store-bought tea was too expensive or completely unavailable. That tea helped soothe sore throats, ease congestion, and lift low moods. The leaves also added a punch to salads and meat dishes, and the petals could be used as a natural garnish. But bee balm's role didn't stop at the kitchen. It brought pollinators, bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, to struggling gardens, increasing yields when every vegetable counted. And thanks to its vibrant red and purple blooms, it added beauty where beauty was in short supply. Families leaned on it for health, taste, and morale. In every way, bee balm pulled more than its weight. Number 15. Dandelion Greens. During the Great Depression, dandelion greens weren't just weeds, they were dinner. Families who couldn't afford much knew that a walk through the yard could yield a meal. The leaves are packed with vitamins A, C, and K, and they're especially rich in iron and calcium. People would pick the youngest, most tender leaves in early spring before they turned too bitter. These greens were boiled, sautéed, or added to soups to stretch out meals and add nutrition. Some families even used the roots for tea or coffee substitutes. Because they grew wild and didn't need tending, dandelions became a reliable standby in times of scarcity. What others tried to kill, Depression-era families were smart enough to gather and eat. They saw the value in what others overlooked. Number 14. Costmary, Bible leaf. Costmary was a Depression-era favorite because it worked quietly and dependably. Its large, fragrant leaves weren't just good for tea, they were tucked into drawers to repel insects, slipped between Bible pages as bookmarks, and added to baked goods when families had little else for flavor. Costmary thrived without fuss, surviving on poor soil and little water, and continued to grow when more delicate greens gave up. Some even brewed it as a digestive aid after heavy meals of starch and beans. In an era when versatility was gold, Costmary delivered. It was an herb, a cleaner, a calming agent, and a flavor booster all in one. Grandparents called it Bible leaf because of how often it showed up in scripture pages. But truth be told, it showed up just about everywhere. Number 13. Chervil. Chervil brought a whisper of elegance to a dinner table that often had little more than beans or bread. Its delicate fern-like leaves carried a gentle anise flavor, subtle, but enough to lift a simple soup or egg dish into something special. Chervil grew best in cooler, shaded spots, which meant families could tuck it under taller crops to make the most of their growing space. Though fragile, it was fast-growing, and if harvested gently, it came back again and again. Depression-era gardeners appreciated this quiet persistence. A handful of chervil, sprinkled fresh, turned ordinary meals into something worth looking forward to. And when times were hard, even a touch of green that made food feel fancier was worth its weight in gold. It reminded folks of better days and gave them hope for more. Number 12. Lamb's quarters, wild spinach. Often called wild spinach, lamb's quarters were a favorite green for struggling families who couldn't afford to waste space or food. It grew freely along roadsides, in gardens, or even in vacant lots. Once harvested, the tender leaves were cooked like spinach, sautéed with fat, folded into eggs, or added to soups. Lamb's quarters are loaded with calcium, protein, and vitamin A, making them more than just filler. They were nourishment when little else was available. Depression-era families valued it not only for its hardiness, but also because it could be harvested again and again from the same plant. Unlike store-bought spinach, this one didn't cost a cent. The lesson? Sometimes survival grows right under your feet, and it's up to you to recognize a meal when you see one. Number 11. Calendula. Calendula brought color, comfort, and practicality into Depression gardens. Nicknamed Poor Man's Saffron, its golden petals were dried and added to soups, stews, and even butter to lend both flavor and color. No small thing when meals were often plain and repetitive. But calendula's usefulness didn't stop at the kitchen. Families turned to it for homemade remedies, treating minor cuts and skin irritations with calendula salves or compresses. The plant grew easily in worn-out soil, bloomed for months, and reseeded itself without fuss. Its cheerful appearance made it a favorite among children, and its value as both food and medicine earned it a permanent place in the garden. For many struggling households, calendula offered not just nourishment, but a sense of beauty and care in an otherwise difficult world. Number 10. Horehound. Horehound may not win any flavor contests, but it was a green that earned its keep. With its bitter taste and fuzzy leaves, it wasn't often eaten raw, but it was powerful. People boiled the leaves into syrups to soothe coughs, steeped them into teas, and even made Horehound candy, which doubled as both a treat and a remedy. It thrived in dry, rocky soil and never asked for much, just a bit of space in the garden or even between stones. Families who knew its value never let it disappear. In times when pharmacies were far and money was scarce, Horehound was the green that stood in for medicine. Tough, stubborn, and surprisingly useful, it was the kind of plant Depression-era families learned to respect, even if they didn't love the taste. Number 9. Curly Dock. Curly Dock, also known as Yellow Dock, was one of those resilient plants that poor families came to rely on during times of economic hardship. Its large, crinkled leaves were among the first greens to appear in early spring, and that made it a welcome sight in Depression gardens. The younger leaves were picked before they turned too bitter and were boiled in several changes of water to remove their sharp, sour taste. Folks often fried them up with salt pork or added them to soups and casseroles. Even the roots were used as a digestive aid or dried for tea. Curly Dock wasn't glamorous, but it was dependable. In an era when fresh vegetables were hard to come by, this hardy wild green helped keep plates and stomachs a little fuller. Number 8. Valerian. Valerian was known for its earthy scent and powerful roots, but it was its calming properties that Depression-era families prized the most. When days felt endless and nights were filled with worry, valerian tea was a trusted ally. People steeped its roots in hot water to ease anxiety and help them sleep, an invaluable comfort when money was tight and futures uncertain. Some even shared it with livestock to keep nervous animals calm. The plant's clusters of tiny white or pink blooms added a soft beauty to backyard plots, while its resilience in poor soil made it a reliable grower. Its strong smell wasn't for everyone, but those who understood its use always made space for it. In troubled times, valerian wasn't just a plant, it was peace in a cup, grown from the ground up. Number 7. Feverfew. Feverfew was the kind of green that worked behind the scenes, quietly present, incredibly useful. Its small, daisy-like flowers added charm to any garden, but its real value was in its bitter leaves. During the Great Depression, people brewed feverfew tea to alleviate headaches, lower fevers, or simply unwind after long days. It was also known to calm nerves, a welcome trait when the future felt uncertain. This hardy plant thrived in poor soil and required little tending, making it a good fit for challenging times. Some families steeped it with other herbs to mask its strong flavor, while others inhaled the steam to relieve congestion. For many, feverfew wasn't just an herbal remedy, it was a reliable companion during seasons when comfort and health were scarce. Number 6. Sweet Woodruff. Sweet Woodruff wasn't just grown for its beauty, it was a multi-use green that lifted both the home and the plate. Its leaves had a sweet, hay-like scent and were used to flavor teas, spring wines, and even homemade desserts. But beyond taste, Woodruff offered subtle comforts. Dried bunches were tucked into closets or placed beneath pillows to freshen air and soothe anxious minds. During the Depression, families leaned into plants like this, ones that provided more than just calories. It thrived in shaded, moist corners of the garden, requiring little care, which made it ideal for spaces that couldn't support more demanding crops. Sweet Woodruff reminded people that even small things, like a cup of tea with a gentle scent, could brighten hard days. In gardens full of hardship, it grew quietly and gave generously. Number 5. Stinging Nettle. Stinging nettle might seem like a plant to avoid, but during the Great Depression, it was a green worth harvesting carefully. With gloves on, families would collect the young, tender leaves in spring and cook them to remove the sting. What they got was a powerhouse of nutrition: iron, calcium, protein and vitamins A and C. People use nettles in soups, stews, and even as a tea to support health during lean months. In some homes, nettle soup became a weekly staple, especially when other vegetables ran low. Despite its prickly reputation, it was a plant that asked for nothing: no weeding, no watering, no tending. Just respect. For struggling families, stinging nettle was proof that even the harshest plants could be generous if you treated them right. Number 4. Skullcap. Skullcap might not look like much at first glance, just another wild green with small blue flowers, but its role in depression gardens was anything but ordinary. Families turned to this humble plant for help with stress, sleeplessness, and tension. It was commonly dried and steeped into tea, sometimes mixed with lemon balm or chamomile to soothe jittery nerves after a long day of work. Skullcap also had a reputation for easing aches and muscle cramps, making it especially valuable to those doing hard labor. It thrived in moist soil and partial shade, quietly growing in forgotten corners of the garden. Its name might have sounded intimidating, but to many, it was a soft, gentle remedy. In a world full of worry and hard choices, Skullcap was one of the few greens that gave back more than it took. Number 3. Pokeweed Shoots. Pokeweed might not sound like food, but during the Great Depression, its tender spring shoots, called poke salad, were a Southern survival staple. Families knew that preparation was key. The young shoots were gathered early, well before the plant matured, and boiled in several changes of water to remove the toxins. Done right, they became a flavorful side dish, often fried in bacon grease or scrambled with eggs. While the mature plant is dangerous, old-timers passed down the knowledge of exactly when and how to pick it safely. It wasn't just food, it was a reminder that hard times required skill, not just luck. In poor rural communities, poke salad season marked the arrival of something fresh, something green, and something deeply rooted in tradition. Number 2. Marshmallow. Marshmallow, with its soft leaves and delicate flowers, may seem dainty, but during the Depression, it pulled more than its weight. Families used the roots to create soothing syrups for sore throats and coughs, especially when medical supplies were scarce or out of reach. Others boiled the leaves for teas that eased digestion or used them in poultices for minor wounds. It also grew well in soggy patches where other plants failed, making it a dependable green for difficult soil. In some homes, the root was boiled down with honey to make a sweet treat, simple, homemade, and deeply appreciated during lean years. Marshmallow reminded people that healing didn't always come from a bottle. Sometimes it grew quietly by the back fence, ready to offer whatever it could. In a time of hardship, that meant everything. Number 1. Lovage. Lovage was one of the most dependable greens in Depression gardens. It grew fast, thrived in rough soil, and came back every year without fuss. The leaves had a strong celery-like flavor, which families used in soups, broths, and bean dishes to add taste when meat was scarce. Older folks even used the hollow stems as straws for homemade tonics and flavored vinegars. What made Lovage special wasn't just the taste, it was how much it gave with so little effort. People dried it for winter, chopped it fresh into potato stews, or brewed it into tea. In lean times, when gardens needed to earn their keep, Lovage stood tall. It brought depth to meals and a sense of comfort to families who had little but made the most of everything. The Great Depression forced families to turn back to the land, and these forgotten greens were part of how they made it through. Which ones do you recognize? If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe for more, and see you on the next one.